Merry Meet. I'm Carl Neal, the producer of Magic Moment and one of the co-anchors of the Pentaclock News. Magic Moment normally showcases people or events in the Oregon pagan community, but this episode is a little bit different. I think this is a critical message for the entire international pagan community, so I ask you from the bottom of my heart to please watch this entire episode. I know it's long, and I know it's boring to sit and watch me, but this message is really critical to our community. And at the very end of this episode, I have a really important call to arms and a challenge for the pagan community, and I hope that you'll stay tuned and watch the entire thing. Now, several events have taken place in the last month that have truly highlighted the need for the pagan community to have a formal press corps. Our community has a few semi-professional journalists, and there are many people who are striving to create more formal media channels within the community, but we lag far behind other groups in this regard. There's a strong chance that you're aware of the anti-witch pages that were posted on Facebook and the efforts of throngs of people to have those pages removed. They were hate speech. These pages actually encouraged people to commit violence based solely on someone's status as a witch. Now, the pages were focused on the witch hunts that are taking place in Africa, which, much like their European counterparts of previous centuries, are really about power and greed and revenge and other negative motivations, and really have nothing to do with witches at all, especially in the Western sense. But those pages could easily have been interpreted in a way that would have incited violence against our community. And the real problem wasn't with the pages itself so much as it was with the response of Facebook's management team. The complaints about hate speech, which clearly violates Facebook's own terms of service, were answered with automated messages telling the person who reported it that the pages had already been checked and it was determined that there were no violations of the terms of service. Thousands of pagans around the world registered their complaints about these Facebook pages that violated the rules that Facebook has for hate speech, but apparently didn't matter because pagans were involved. And Facebook simply remained silent throughout this process. It wasn't until some large organizations got involved that any movement took place. Tens, if not hundreds, of thousands of outraged pagans were powerless to even make contact with Facebook's leadership, and the international media paid no attention. If our community had a formal news corps in this situation, we would have gotten the attention that it deserved. An iconic American social media company intentionally ignoring their own rules, but only for those of one particular religion, that struggle would have been headline news if it were not for the fact that pagans were the targeted group. Having organizations like the Lady Liberty League and Circle Sanctuary working in our community is an amazing blessing. Without them, those Facebook pages would likely still be there. But we need a neutral media that's focused on pagan issues. If we had one, Facebook would have paid attention to us a lot faster. Bad publicity, especially of this nature, is something that Facebook and its shareholders would have responded to. But pagans have no credible threat of a real media. So they ignored us until I personally suspect that lawsuits were suggested by these organizations who keep attorneys on their staff. And that's the only reason for Facebook's sudden reversal on the issue, my personal theory. Now, here's another equally critical reason for us to have established media in our community. A few weeks ago, Starhawk, and let's face it, she's a superstar in our community, came to the Oregon coast and gave a very important lecture about community activism and the need for people to stand up. There was not a single member of the mainstream or local media present. This was a very important lecture, and not even a reporter from the local newspaper came out to see one of the founders of the modern pagan movement. It's incredible. Were you there that night? There were only about 60 people there to hear this incredibly important message. Starhawk wasn't selling anything or introducing a new line of cloaks. She had something critical for every member of the pagan community to hear. I'm sure she's discussed the same topic in other places, but how many heard her then? So Starhawk delivered this amazing and motivating lecture to 60 interested pagans in Oregon. There are roughly 39,000 pagans in Oregon, according to census data. 60 out of 39,000 people heard the message. Of the 60 of us who were there, how many of us can even accurately remember the details of what Starhawk said? It's a message that would be lost for all practical purposes, except for one thing. Magic Moment and the Pentaclock News were there with a camera. With her permission, we recorded the entire event. Now you'll get to see the core of Starhawk's message in the next episode of the Pentaclock News. And then later in September, there will be a special 30-minute edition of Magic Moment that will cover her lecture in detail so that that knowledge and that information won't be lost. Decades from now, the video footage will still exist and people will still be able to hear Starhawk's words generations after she's crossed over. With one camera, Starhawk's appearance was transformed from a small meeting in a pretty little seaside resort town to a potent message for pagans all around the globe. Just one little camera made all the difference. But here's one of the big problems. Professional video gear is expensive. Just one video camera easily costs $2,000 used for quality high-def camera. So like others, this show has relied upon our public access television stations for equipment. When I learned that Starhawk was coming, I immediately reached out to the shop that was hosting her and got their permission to attend and record. Starhawk gave her permission for me to attend and record, so I went to our local public access station to get a camera. Because there was a large concert taking place that same day, the public access station had decided not to let anyone check out any of their cameras so that they could use them themselves to record this concert. No camera for Starhawk. Do you think that if I had gone in there and said that I'm from a Christian church and Billy Graham is flying into town and he's agreed to let us interview him for our public access show, could we get a camera? Maybe they'd have found a camera in that circumstance. Maybe they wouldn't, I don't know. But what I do know is that Starhawk came here and I couldn't get a camera from the station that we relied on. The only reason that we were able to record that at all was because I was able to literally get on my knees and beg another station to loan us a camera for the night. And they did. And so thankfully this will go forward and we're going to be able to see Starhawk's message. But I want to remind everybody that reliance on public access equipment is exactly what killed the Pagan Voice earlier this year, a wonderful one-hour news program for pagans. And it died simply because the public access equipment wasn't reliably available to them. And that's a problem that we're facing too. And that's why I've spent my own money to purchase video editing equipment, and I'm working hard to raise the funds to purchase our first camera. Unless we break free of borrowed equipment and begin to form real news organizations that are self-sustaining, we're going to lose this power that we have. And let me ask, how else are we going to document the elders in our community? We're many decades from the formation of the modern pagan movement, and we've already lost some of our founding members. And we didn't preserve their words aside from some memories. We can easily go to the web and find recordings of Woodrow Wilson's speeches, a president from 100 years ago. But those from Starhawk, Oberon Zell, Scott Cunningham, and others, there are almost none of them available, and of those that are available, almost none of them are of professional quality. There's an urgency to this mission. We need to document our elders while they're still here. We need to document our events, not only so that we can personally remember, but so that we can show our children and their children. Let's not forget about sharing our footage with the mainstream media. That's a certain way for us to get media coverage, is to offer them completed news stories in broadcast quality video. We can't do that with public access equipment because the rules forbid us from ever showing any footage shot with these cameras on any type of commercial television, even the news. So that's one more reason it's blocking another avenue for us to make contact with the mainstream media. So if you happen to have any high-quality professional video gear that you'd like to donate, we'd love to have it. Even just a few XLR cables, we'll take it. But the bottom line is we need to own our own gear, including our own cameras, so that we can break free of these restrictions. That also gives us the ability to do something critical, which is to commercialize our media. It needs to be able to generate its own income so that it can sustain itself, so that we can support a professional media core. Magic Moment and the Pentaclock News are examples of what can be done. They're not the end-all and be-all, but they're a good starting place. Now, I promised that there was going to be something special for you to do, and let me bring that up right now. I appreciate that you've stayed with the broadcast, just watching me talk for this much time. But I really hope that if you fast forwarded to this point in the episode that you'll go back and watch the whole thing, because this is an important message. But here's the challenge. September is a really busy month on most pagan calendars. It's Pagan Pride season. Pagan Pride days are being held all over the country. Here in Oregon, we also have several big events in September. The Oregon Coast Pan-Pagan Gathering and the Northwest Fall Equinox Festival are a couple of examples of that in September. Now, especially at Pagan Pride days, I want everyone who hears this message to take your smartphones, to take your digital cameras, to take your camcorders with you to these events. Take pictures, shoot video, talk to people. Obviously, you want to get their permission before you take their pictures, and then send this to the national media. All of the major news networks have ways that we're able to report to them directly. For example, CNN has the iReporter, ABC News has the Instant Index. These are all things where we can contribute directly to them and show them what's going on and show them that there's an interest. And if all of us do this, if we all go to Pagan Pride, we all take pictures, we all blast the media with emails and tweets and even photographs that are sent to them from our events, they're going to take notice. If thousands of us do this, they won't be able to ignore it. If tens of thousands of us do this and overwhelm their servers every single weekend with pictures of pagan events, they will take notice. They may not cover us this year, but they'll remember next year, and when the season comes around again, they just might show up and finally give us some coverage of our events the way that they do people of other religions. So that's the message that I have for you. It's really critical that our community develop media outlets. We do have some strong and developing print outlets, both online and on paper. Witches and Pagans magazine is a great example. The Wild Hunt is a great example. But we also need television and we need radio. We need to communicate in these types of formats that everyone is used to. It's called mass media for a reason, so that we can reach people when important things are happening. You know where to turn to get the news. That's what we need. And that will make all the difference. So thank you so much for sticking with me. And please, if you have any questions about this media blitz during September, don't hesitate to email or call us. What we want is to fill up every news network, including Fox, with photos and accounts from pagan events and pagan pride days to show people that we're not a threat. We certainly don't deserve to be killed by fire, as was suggested on Facebook. So thank you so very much. I appreciate your time. Blessed be.